All right. Welcome to Momentous Live, episode 22. I had 21 in the rundown, but it's actually episode 22, but 1/4 remote. This is quite the experiment this week. But this week we have Google Pixel 6, finally, time crystal, air taxis, and more. We are joined, as usual, by the lovely and talented wearing with a purple halo today.
Hi, I'm Gray Williams.
And below me is the stalwart
William Silver.
And beside him is the incomparable guest returning once again for, is this 4 or 5? It's like,
I think this might be 5.
This is your free coffee.
This is where I just start giving up and don't even bother. Jamie Reynolds, nice to see you.
Jamie Reynolds playing the role of Tasia Custody, who we believe is she's on a scouting mission. She's got with all that, she's going to earn all the badges, whatever kind of scouting it might be. So as mentioned, you may have noticed I'm not in my usual background, my black void. We have a hotel room environment, natural light through the window. So we're going to keep it tight today before we lose natural light. We've got all sorts of fun things to talk about, and let's jump right into it. Starting with Craft Aerospace's novel take on VTOL or VTOL aircraft could upend local travel. Now, we've spoken about VTOLs before here on Momentous Live in the past, and there seems to be a lot of activity happening in the New York area. They've got the density there. They've got lots of tall buildings. Uber has been working on a VTOL program. We've talked about piloted versus autonomous VTOLs as well. But the question is, will air taxis like this, whether autonomous or otherwise, actually become a thing? And what this company, Craft Aerospace, is doing is taking a bit of a different approach. And this aircraft looks like unlike anything that I've ever seen before. Gray, being our official aerospace correspondent, what are your initial thoughts when you saw this Craft Aerospace aircraft?
Very, very cool design. Reminds me of the Spruce Goose a little bit. But on a much smaller scale. The fascinating thing here is just in ways that we're moving air either through or around aircraft. There was some talk many years ago about ramjets being the big thing, being able to essentially almost have an engine that breathes and aspirates air on its way through. This is a neat idea. We were looking at VTOL aircraft even back 20, 30 years ago. We first started to see the British with the Harrier jump jet. Neat concept, but the biggest thing obviously was sort of like lift and then thrust. With something like this, just with the way that this is moving air across that wing and through that wing, it's far more energy efficient. You don't have to have those massive amounts of fuel. The thing that I'm finding here as well is when we're combining this with technology like LiPo batteries, this actually could be feasible for us to have all over various cities around North America and around the world.
I think for a lot of our generation, the first we ever saw an aircraft that could go forward and up and down, but sort of in a plane style configuration was like the Harrier jet. And was it True Lies with Arnold Schwarzenegger? Is it just me? Or was that that's like, wow, look at that, a jet that can go up and down. So obviously we're looking at a lot smaller scale. And one of the things with these VTOLs as well is we're not seeing the use of jet engines like in most commercial aircraft. It's the return of propellers because they can be tilted or in this case, directed for the airstream, blah, blah, blah. It's way beyond my understanding of things. But it's interesting because, what's old is new again, in a sense here.
Yeah, essentially, like when you take a look at the diagram that's here on the page, you're looking at almost like an articulated wing that's able to shift the thrust downwards. So basically, you're getting that lift, and then as you're moving through space, that thrust is then converted to lift as it straightens the wing out. It's a really brilliant idea. What do they call it here? It was
box wing.
Yeah, a blown wing or deflected slipstream. Mm-hmm. And the physics make sense. Can they make it work? Really, is the question.
And I think when they have the blown wings in that configuration, it's known as the box wing here. Now, some people might argue that, well, this is just another, yet another thing for the rich to, gallivant about. and whatnot. But the founder insists that we're not talking about flying wealthy people to the mall. There are major inefficiencies in modern corridors here. The key to shortening that delay is picking people up in cities and dropping them off in cities. And that's something that we saw in the last story a few weeks ago as well. This isn't so much from building to building necessarily, but it's from center to center. And, maybe decongesting some major arteries. Now, speaking of wealthy, Jamie, what's your take on this? What would it take to convince you to hop in an aircraft like this to get from, say, here to Surrey or whatnot?
Definitely fascinating. But there's a newer technology that I'm really interested in, which is called a helicopter. And the helicopter is a single rotor, and it can get you from city to city, and seems to be a good option that might even surpass this.
I've heard that they are flying death traps, though. I mean, that's a single point of failure. Only one blade.
I don't know. You don't see too many helicopter crashes, except for that basketball player a couple of years ago. Kobe, yeah, exactly.
And a fellow a roller hockey player that I used to play with, actually.
Oh, okay. Wow.
A couple of years ago. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
it does happen, yeah, but airplane crashes happen as well. Air travel is very safe, but I don't see why this is going to make such a huge impact when helicopters they made an impact for sure, but helicopters seems to be what they're supplanting, not airlines at this point. So I don't see the difference.
I mean, when I'm looking at this, I would say probably capacity. I've taken the helicopter over to Victoria. And actually had a very bad experience. I had barotrauma on the way down. But the blood vessels in my eyes popped, which was not great. Yeah, nothing to do with the helicopter. I don't think I just had a sinus infection at the time. Probably not. But when you're looking at this diagram here, this one's sorry. Let me get that back up there. This is kind of interesting because again, as the wing extends, you're ending up with an aircraft that does have the ability to generate traditional lift. So if you do have a failure of the engine, this becomes essentially like a lot of airplanes do. Cheers to Sully in the New York River. There, it becomes a glider. And so, like looking at that, I'm thinking one, when you don't have to generate all of that lift straight up, that's probably more energy efficient when they're actually being able to push across an airfoil like this. Energy efficient, probably more capacity, and I would say probably faster as well. Because when you start thinking about a helicopter, you've got to basically be able to get up in the air and then you've got to get going. Whether these are vertical takeoff or short takeoff and landing, if it's a short takeoff and landing, you've got a relatively smaller runway and you're still, on your way out at that point. I think that's probably it. And air taxi is kind of the idea that they're sort of talking about here. Instead of it being an airport or like a massive landing strip, could you essentially have almost like a parking lot where these things are taking off out of? The big question for me at that point, though, is just like, how does this type of air traffic fit into what we're doing safety-wise with larger airplanes and even with smaller craft? This is going to add a whole lot of congestion into the air.
I think one of the key differences, too, between this and conventional helicopters is the capacity, 9 passengers and up to 2 pilots, but flying up to around 30,000 feet at approximately 300 knots, which is about 345 miles an hour. And what is that, like 600 kilometers an hour, something like that. So slower than a passenger jet, pretty darn quick. And, you're skipping a lot of the traditional airport stuff. So I think that's the thing, like way faster than helicopters. So, Will, without uttering the words transporter pad, what's it going to take? What's it going to take to get you into one of these VTOLs today?
Well, I won't use my usual reference that I'm just not going to be an early adopter when my life is on the line. But I think ideas like this, hopefully it comes to fruition. We'll see. I do like the way people are thinking. First of all, they're trying to make it more, fuel efficient, greener. And just sort of have that in mind. We, especially after COVID and things that are going on in terms of where the population is going, I think there's a huge advantage to people living maybe outside of a city center or in other communities and commuting in. I know every time I go to England, I'm always very, very jealous that they have such a good train system. Like I have family that live in Cambridge, and they can take the train into London in an hour. And some people live in that community and just commute in to London. And it's just so dense that, first of all, there's such a good train system, but second of all, England and Europe tend to be dense in general. But you can live in a whole different city and, takes you an hour to get in, and there's so many cities all the way around. You can choose where you live in terms of lifestyle and all sorts of other things. Whereas, especially here in Canada, we tend to be fairly locked in. Kelowna's 4 hours away. Seattle's even 3 hours away. So if there was something that could cut that distance down, and you could travel to Victoria in half an hour or to Kelowna in an hour, that would be awesome, and just open up the realm of possibilities.
Now, with that in mind, the range of hybrid hybrid gas/electric engines, about 1,000 miles, they're saying. I mean, these aren't flying yet, to be clear, but based on the designs they've got so far. And the idea is that it would cover about 45 of the top 50 busiest routes in the world, such as LA to San Francisco, Seoul to Jeju Island, and Tokyo to Osaka. So they're not thinking strictly in the North American context, but wherever there are large metropolitan areas. And I think this would probably be geared toward business travelers, not necessarily the wealthy, super wealthy, but executives for sure, people for whom time is money. And I think whatever the case, it's nice to see some innovation happening in these sorts of things again, like the return of supersonic jets, which we talked about a few weeks ago as well. If that gets off the ground, so to speak, as well. So. Yeah, let's just keep it coming. I say, it's the spirit of innovation and competition. Go ahead, Will.
Can I add one more thing? Just that, I think there's also a difference between an hour in a car commuting by yourself to your job, as opposed to jumping in mass transit with a bunch of other people and being more efficient that way, and not having to drive it or sit in rush hour traffic. And for me, that's very appealing. Now, some people wouldn't feel that way, and obviously COVID has changed how we feel about mass transit. But I think in general, when things get back, hopefully, and we get out of maybe less of a pandemic and more of an epidemic, we're going to feel better about things like this and about mass transit. And I think ultimately, I feel in Lower Mainland we need more options just in general. So I know this isn't targeted for Vancouver, but I just love where this is going.
Maybe someday. In another innovative sort of news, again, still on paper, it sounds like Google might have just discovered time crystals, which might be the greatest scientific achievement of our lifetimes. Maybe. We'll see. It's kind of like the searching for the Higgs boson. It's like we heard about it for a long, long time. And is this actually going to happen? So what are time crystals? So apparently this represents a new phase of matter. And the analogy that's used in one of the articles we found talks about shifting of phases of matter, say like ice cube to liquid water. And the idea here is that when over time, if you increase the temperature, ice will get warmer, turn into water, et cetera, and the reverse happens. Something freezes up. That's known as thermal equilibrium. So because the universe is always moving toward entropy, and we'll get Jamie to expound on entropy in a moment, because I know it's one of his favorite topics. But the idea here again, it's all brain herdy stuff, kind of stuff, is that the idea is that it's always shifting back and forth, kind of like the timey, what's the Doctor Who phrase?
Wibbly wobbly, timey wimey.
Exactly. And time crystals makes us think it has something to do with time travel or whatnot. Another one of Jamie's favorite topics, of course, but it's not quite that. Jamie, now I know that that you like to wrap your mind around sciencey kinds of things. And this is a real thinker. This is like, we aim on Momentous to put the envelope and really challenge ourselves here. What do you think? What is the implications for this potential discovery? Like what's it for? Like what else is Google working on that this may have some implications?
Well, yeah, Google is kind of an interesting animal. We'll get into the Pixel 6 coming up soon, and part of that is their machine learning and AI portion of it. And this discovery seems like an on-paper discovery. I don't know the technical details behind it, but it seems to really going to be aid in things that require quantum computing. How, I don't exactly know. But it sort of sounds like the idea is, in real basic terms, I read in this article, it's about having your cake, and then the cake's gone, but then the cake just comes back. So it's a bit of it's a bit
The
of
cake is a lie, I hear.
the cake is a lie. That's true. But there's also there's a theory that was introduced in here saying if this is real, theoretically you could kind of create a universe that exists inside of time crystals, and that will always exist. And maybe we're in one of those. Yeah, exactly. So it basically it's eliminating. Sounds like it's eliminating entropy, which is basically heat death. Basically, everything just cools down because it escapes as heat and then turns into rock and cold rock. But this somehow gets around that, and I don't. Okay. I think it's just I got to read more is all it comes down to. I need more than a couple hours to kind of get my head wrapped around that one. But it is. I will say it's fascinating to be in a time when we are discovering at least these theoretical possibilities and actually having the ability to possibly create them. That is kind of fun, but it's a bit strange in that the stuff that we're discovering now is stuff people just don't understand. It used to be, a telephone, you kind of, electrical signals and it sends electricity back and forth and you can talk to people by vibrating a thing and you can understand it. This is getting over everybody's head. So it's a little strange.
What's the quote about things seeming like magic?
Yes.
Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So one of the key things here is that time crystals want to be coherent. There's this whole notion of quantum coherence. And Graham, I saw that you had highlighted something in an article there. Are you able to wrap your mind around coherence versus decoherence and how it applies to quantum computing?
Yeah. So when we think about quantum states, when we're looking at quantum computing, with traditional computing, you're looking for either a 1 or a 0, a state that's either on or off. With quantum computing, the challenge is that much like any sort of quantum state, it can change when it's observed. That's one of the challenges of dealing with quantum computing. So looking at this, and if you've got something that we know will return to a state, you've now kind of started to take away some of that, what they're calling decoherence, but you could almost describe it as just a lack of confidence in what it is that you're seeing. And we've got a number of quantum computing groups around the world. Google's working on one. There's one in Burnaby called D-Wave. And as we're kind of getting closer to understanding the bits of the quantum world, what they're calling qubits, that has been the challenge. Is basically looking at something, observing it, and saying that's the output of this. Now that we have something that maybe actually provides some structure to that, this could basically give us a more reliable way of determining what quantum computing is telling us. Right now, like looking at this, and I was starting to read the technical paper on it, which I'm taking second year physics this fall, so it is still a little beyond me. But that right there says that having a direct measurement of a qubit is probably the most important part of this, if they can make that work.
Will, what do you think the application of this might be toward scratch DJing?
I have no idea. I think like with a lot of these things, it's very exciting, but it's easy to get ahead of ourselves. I mean, do we have dinosaurs from CRISPR yet? Did cold fusion work out 20 years ago? I mean, I think a lot of this is still theoretical and it's going to take many years to work out. I think in one of the articles it said, we could have warp drive by the end of our lifetime. It's like, let's wait for that a little bit. Let's get it to actually work first, and then
make sure we can get back.
Also, bringing up that cold fusion thing, like we thought we might have discovered cold fusion like 20 years ago.
I remember it was even in the 80s they were talking about tabletop fusion, and it's like, it turned out it wasn't actually a thing. They still need like supercooling and all that sort of stuff. Let's
peer review first. That's what I'm saying. Let's get this documented, and this is part of the scientific process. So exciting. It's going to take a while. The boring science stuff needs to happen now. So let's work it all out.
Well, let's keep clicking on all those Google ads so they can continue to fund this kind of research, which will ultimately share our conception of reality as we know it. But in the meantime, maybe they on their yearly schedule, they have teased the new Google Pixel 6, which is doing its best impression of Daft Punk characters. May they rest in peace. kind of a bold new design. And Jamie, being our official momentous Android correspondent, is going to give us a little download. Now, you must have a little pain in your heart because you were going to hold out for the Pixel 6. I remember us talking about it, and then you made a choice, and now
I did.
this.
I did.
Walk us through that journey.
They're just phones. I'm again, I'm not a brand guy, so I just wanted to do what I wanted to do. I did see the Pixel 6, some renderings a few weeks ago, and I saw that big bar on there, and I thought, it's actually not a bad idea. Just the other day, I've got my Samsung S21 Ultra going here, and it's got the case on it. It's got the heck of a bump on the backside there, and I was thinking about how, boy, they really got to just make ugly backs to phones, because everybody puts a case on now. So what's the point? Why do they spend all this money on different stuff? And that's kind of like, for me, I'm looking at this phone saying, hey, it looks kind of weird, but you put a case on it, it'll probably flatten it all out. Ultimately, I think I do like some of the software updates or software additions that Samsung does put on their phones. Google is a nice, clean Android experience, but I've gotten used to some of the things on Samsung, and I thought, it's a pretty darn good phone. It's got good reviews, 100 times digital zoom on there, which creates some very odd-looking pictures. But it's just a phone. It's just a phone. But it looks like they're just stepping up their game with the new Tensor chip, which used to be called Whitechapel. And it is going to, again, as I referred to earlier, help apparently with the artificial intelligence and machine learning, which is what Google really seems to be pushing everything towards, whether it comes to helping with photography and making things better when you take a picture and make it look that much better, or when it comes to recognizing your voice without being hooked up to the internet. You can tell your phone or have it take down things, or even do translations if you're in a different country, all built onto one chip, because they've got their algorithms all set up so fancy that they can do it without being hooked up to the internet anymore. So all these things are just the next evolution, the next step. Apple has their M1 chip, which does its own version of making things great too, and so it's just the next step. And what's interesting, of course, too, is the way that Google and Apple have both creating their own chips now to really vertically integrate their manufacturing process. Samsung itself, of course, makes a lot of the screens and those types of things for both Google and Apple. But yeah, this is just that next evolution.
You make up a good point about the processors, and in the Android marketplace, Qualcomm has really had that market sewn up for a long time. So, Google is doing like Apple and others to try to forge their own path and maybe break a bit of the reliance on Qualcomm. Now, Gray, I know that you are a fan of monopolies, or perhaps not, and there's been some challenges with Qualcomm and patents between some cases between Qualcomm and Apple over the years. What is this signal to you with Google going their own route? Like, should Qualcomm be worried about the Pixel Phone 6 and the Pixel Pro?
Well, looking at it right now, I mean, Google has taken sort of the Pixel line back under their wing. This is something that I think felt a little abandoned over the last little while, and they've actually even acknowledged that here, saying, we weren't actually stepping up to the plate and delivering a premium quality phone. And I think a lot of users were feeling the same way. So for Google to step up like this, with a premium device, premium materials, premium price, I think people usually like 2 out of the 3 of those. But when we're looking at the processor itself, this is what Google needs to do. Should Qualcomm be afraid? Yeah, they should. They've been kind of resting on their laurels for a little while. Like looking at where everyone else has taken their processors, where Samsung's taken their reference designs, looking at NVIDIA and how they were looking at possibly trying to acquire ARM. Looks like the British may have kiboshed that, but we'll see. But right now, there are sort of the venerated graybeards of the market, Intel and AMD. We've got sort of these up-and-comers that have these mobile processors, which will be driving the vast majority of the things that we do in the future, right? Like either just more energy efficient and more cores in that energy efficiency is what we're going to need Big iron is really not what most consumers are going to be looking for. So Google has done the right thing here. It'll be interesting to see, because Apple went through and they poached a ton of great contributors and some great minds to build what they've done with the A series and the M series processors. I'm fascinated to know who's working on Tensor and where that's going to go for Google. This right here, like these two guys, these two companies are going to be basically setting the stage, I think, for people like Qualcomm and everyone else to say, okay, we brought this far. These two are now really taking this to another place. The company that I'm interested in, which I guess we'll get to in a little bit of a moment, is, does Mark think that he has an entry in this place? Because I think he's probably looking at this and probably feeling left out of the tea party right now, like the actual Mad Hatter's Tea Party, not the
exactly.
Tea Party.
And we will indeed get there. So quick rundown on the speeds and feeds for those that are interested. The Pixel 6 Pro, which is the larger of the two, will have a 6.7-inch QHD plus display with 120 hertz refresh rate. And the regular Pixel 6 has a 6.4-inch. So, it's a big boy as well. Now, Will, when it comes to design, I often look to you for your opinions. And there's one thing that Jamie mentioned was the replacing the camera bump with that sort of camera strip. It reminds me a little bit of a Cylon. I just want to see like a red light going back and forth through there. That would be amazing. Yeah. But that's what houses the camera and sensor cluster there.
Yeah.
Now, I'm asking you, Will, would you prefer a phone like this that's got this strip that sticks out, or the traditional camera bump? Or would you want them to fill the rest of that space in and fill it with battery, even though that would make for a heavier phone? Because some people are saying, why a phone's got to be so thin? We want what's most important? Battery life. Who needs these phones so thin and so light? Give us thick boys with more battery instead of these humps. And like Jamie said, we're always putting cases on. What's going on? What's your take on that, Will?
I love the idea of having more battery life. I mean, I think that's always a plus, and that those phones that actually like slap a battery on the back of your phone, I think that's a great idea. I mean, just as an aesthetic design, I like that design. I still prefer some of the product. I know, don't jump on me, but I still prefer the products that Apple produces, just because the simplicity of the colors and just flat design. I do like what they do with a lot of their products. I think there's a different approach, so I give them kudos for that. And I think that it is very striking in its own regard. So I think it should really be complimented on that. And I like the design as well. It's a little bit, to your point, almost sort of techie meets graphic design in some ways, because it does have that sort of Cylon hump, or a bit of, Geordie LaForge kind of look, or something like that, robotic. I think, might as well go in and rethink the bump as well, because pretty much everyone's doing the same sort of camera bump. So it's nice to see someone doing something different. So
mixing it up. Remember how phones used to look so different from one another, whether it was the Nokias versus the Motorola's and so on. And things every with this in the era of the modern smartphone, things just went slab of glass. So. Yeah. Black front. So what do you got? What are you doing on the back? And I agree, it's nice to see a little bit of a different approach to the camera bump.
The thing is, it's easy to get to forget. The slab of glass is a beautiful design. If I can use your slab of glass metaphor, it's a beautiful design. It's just, to your point, everyone does it, so it doesn't look distinctive, and you get used to it. But it is an amazing design. It's just that this is a whole nother thing, right?
I'm really hoping that somebody turns the bottom of this into a case that actually has like a cavity for your keys. I mean, I know it sounds funny, but having something that like clicks onto the back, that maybe it's sort of hidden, but it's got some extra cash, some keys in there.
Oh, okay. What? Great. Just to clarify here, this is the guy who doesn't carry cash. And keys? Do you carry keys too? I thought you were all boop beep boop, Mr. RFID.
I've got a Mortis lock at the front that I literally just bought an Igloo Smart Mortis 2 that's sitting right here. That has to be installed this week. But still,
for other
keys
people.
are handy.
I do also love the two-tone of over top of the bump as well. That's just a nice little touch.
Yeah. Google's definitely with the Pixel line has definitely been having fun with colors. I really like when they've done like the white and the orange button and stuff like that. Just little splashes of color to get us away from black and silver all the time. Now, Jamie, let's end off with you on this. Now, the last few iterations of the Pixel phones have been decidedly mid-tier. With some great features, including the cameras, which have really been augmented by the software. Like the sensors have been okay, but like the Google, obviously their software chops have really been shown off in their camera technology and night mode and things like that. With the Pixel 6 and the Pixel 6 Pro, they're really pushing up into the premium market, and we're looking at the scuttlebutt feels like it's going to be $1,000 plus US dollars. How do you think that is going to work out for Google, given that the Pixel's already kind of niche as it is? Is this the right play?
It's like Apple, Google's got a ton of cash, so it's almost like they don't really care. They can shovel a bunch of money at this, put out a good phone to back their name as a good quality company. As soon as you try and put a product out there that's trying to be cheaper for the client, and it is cheaper, it sort of sullies the name. People are like, this is okay. It's just kind of a cheap phone. I think Google wants to just back their name up with a quality product. So it's probably going to be expensive, but you know what? People love their phones, and they are glued to their phones, and they will use their phones. If they want a Google phone and they want something that's going to be the best, and a lot of people do, people will buy it. And then I don't know what the price point will be for the 6 Pro, but there's different price ranges out there. But yeah, I think at this point, for what Google's trying to do, they probably should go premium phones, because there's so many other cheap phones out there when it comes to Android. There's I don't know how many companies make them, but there's a ton of different companies making it with giving people lots of choice. But for the people that want to have a premium level phone, they can choose some of the Samsung options, or they can choose the Google option, and I think it's actually a good play.
Well, once you pick up then the very last word, Jamie. Now that you see the Pixel 6 and the Pixel 6 Pro, do you end up being, that is probably a foregone conclusion that you're going Android, because that's the ecosystem you've been in for several years. And, you're not necessarily loyal to Samsung per se, but that you've been entertaining the idea of the next Pixel, but you kind of had to, make the call. Do you wish you had waited?
No. If I, in the end, if I decide that I need the Pixel 6, I'll, get rid of this one and get a Pixel 6. The problem is it's like computers nowadays. What do I need a fancier computer for, really, if I can get so much out of what I already have? I've got my a gaming laptop that I use for work, but it also works for games, and it still works for games, and it does great. So you don't really, in the end, you get another 5% every year better than what you had before. You know what? It's really just a matter of people just wanting the next best gadget. And it's an addiction, technology addiction, where we do like to just have that next greatest thing. And, it's good. It's got a little bit bigger battery. And my battery, that was my main issue with my previous one. It worked great, but the battery was just starting to go. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm out of contract for 6 months to a year. Time to just get a new phone. So, I think we're getting to that point with phones now too. They're trying to jam all these crazy new technologies in there to say, well, you got to have this, you got to have augmented reality, you got to do all this because it's great, and we're going to jam all this in here, and look how much better your phone's going to be. I still kind of surf the internet and take the odd picture, and it works well for me. So I think more and more people are getting that way, where they just need a phone to do what it needs to do, and they don't necessarily need to go to the end. And that's kind of where I'm at now. If I need something with the new phone, I'll get it, but I'm not going to need it. It's going to be fine.
You're going to wait for the Pixel 12 featuring time crystal technology?
Oh, that's the dream.
Quantum coherence, finally, in a smartphone. So speaking of slick design, and especially if someone is an Android smartphone user and just cannot bring themselves to buy Apple AirPods or AirPods Pro, Nothing has launched their Ear One buds. Stupidest name ever, but $99 looks pretty slick. Nice clear approach, a little clear and white, a bit of black in there, a little splash of red on the. Oh, and they did the white and red for left and right. which is kind of a throwback to old RCA cables. Again, Will, I'm going to start with you on the design side, and being an audio guy yourself. Does this, tempt you to go away, like in your next pair of earbuds to use with your iPhone, because these could be used with iPhones and Android phones, of course. You tempted by this at all? What do you think of this look?
No, I mean, again, it's nice to have something different in the marketplace. One of the things too that I think is often interesting when products launch is how cool is it going to look in person, or how slick is the marketing company and the design company that came up with these photo shoots and the ladybugs next to them and all this kind of stuff.
What are those ladybugs doing precisely?
This is a family rated podcast. We can't go into it.
Yeah, don't ask me. But I think they're cool, but I don't think they're necessarily for me. I mean, again, if they come out and they absolutely light the world on fire, maybe I'll consider them. But there's nothing I think there that really entices me away.
Gray, what about you?
I mean, it's awesome that we've got a hardware company coming out of nowhere and challenging a few of the main players, right? Like when you think about the wireless earphone market right now, who do you think of? You think of Apple. Samsung's got their Galaxy Buds. There are the cheap and cheerful Echo Buds. Who else is in there? Sony's got some. Jabber's got some. Yep. And everyone's kind of occupying the same price point that Apple is. Apple's on the higher end, but when Jabbers first came out, they were up there in price as well. I was actually talking to a friend of mine earlier this week, and the Jabra, I think it's Jaybirds 2 versus the 3. The 3 was actually a step down in quality. They went to a proprietary charger and that sort of thing. So looking at this, like neat little design, $100 is hard to argue with. So you're going to see, I think a lot of people pick these up. The printing on the side, that is just printing, right? That's not actually a digital display.
I believe it's just printing, unfortunately, because it's badass if it was digital display. You can have little messages appear on a marquee scrolling on your ears.
Not like D&D, like, please don't bother me unless I'm listening. But otherwise, from an industrial design standpoint, I don't hate them. We're looking at when AirPods first came out, and everyone was like, I really don't want these Q-tips sticking out of my ears. Well, we all had Q-tips with wires sticking out of our ears. And so this really just, it's a play on that same formula. I think it's obviously it's a bit of a compliment to Apple that they're going in this direction, but great little price. If you got kids, even if you're on an Apple phone and you don't want them destroying a $170 to $200 to $320 pair of AirPods or AirPods Pro, these things are ideal. Given the amount of times that I have lost an AirPod twice, my partner lost an AirPod, once, and also not being able to replace the battery on them. That's probably one of my biggest problems with AirPods right now, is sinking that money into these things and then going back to Apple and saying, well, I need a new one. And they'll either charge you the $40 for a new one because you needed to replace the battery and they can't, or the $80 because somebody in the store won't do that for you. It's a really weird experience. So looking at that, where one AirPod is almost as much as a pair here, I can see a lot of people who are probably reaching the end of their tolerance with AirPods and looking at this and going, you know what, for the amount of times that I use them, this is going to be a good experience.
Once again, it's been nice to see the Cambrian explosion of earbuds since the release of the AirPods. It really kickstarted that market. And of course, we had a lot of copycats and straight up counterfeits, but really like to see the variety of form factors and styles coming in. The Microsoft Surface ones that are more like discs that go in your ears. The Samsung ones look a little different too. So just, to see that creativity and, choice of designs design offerings come out is nice to see. Now, Jamie, have you ventured into the wireless earbuds world, or are you still generally rocking the wired for your purposes?
Well, I do find the fidelity of a wired headphone appealing, and I like the fact when one pops out of my ear, it doesn't just disappear somewhere
down the drain.
They're just actually easy to manage and they're cheap. That was actually one of the frustrations I didn't like when Samsung got rid of the headphone jack, as Apple did originally, and Google has now done too. I think it's actually a wonderful piece of hardware to be able to plug your audio into. But I do have a pair of wireless headphones. They do. I can't remember what brand they are, but they have the wire connecting the two sides. So again, same thing. If one pops out, it's not going anywhere. And I like having the security of that. And it's one that wraps around my ear. So if I'm doing gardening or I'm doing whatever I want to do, they're there. They're not going anywhere. They're not just using the friction of being in my ears to stay. So, but I do find they can be a little annoying too. Again, I don't like sometimes the auto quality or the dropouts do happen once in a while for, just when you're jumping between different places, it can be a bit of an issue. So I still like my corded headphones for most things, but when necessary, I'll do the wireless.
Can I give another hot take here?
Do it.
Yeah. The other thing that I don't like about AirBuds is that it's harder to tell crazy people from people just having animated conversations on the street. So that has made it more difficult. Like, hey, are they crazy or not? Are they yelling at someone or are they just yelling at air?
It's interesting. We kind of got over the whole business bro with the Bluetooth headset D-bag kind of thing. After maybe 6 months or so, when people started showing up with AirPods, and they, like to Gray's point, they looked just like earpods, but that someone snipped the cables off. It was pretty much the same design in the original iteration anyway. And then, a year or two later came the AirPods Pro and so on. I have to admit, for me, going wireless that way was a game changer, because for years and years now, I listen to stuff all day long, whether it's music or podcasts or what have you. And I found with the wired earphones, I kept catching on like banisters, railings, things like that. And especially if you've got in-ear ones as opposed to ones that just sit in your ear, like it hurts like a mofo when you're like, oh, geez. So having that wireless freedom really was a game changer for me. Just don't stand too close to the microwave with the Bluetooth, because sometimes it can cut out. Or sometimes if you go out to do some stuff in the garden, but you leave your phone inside, as Jamie, you may have experienced. Like, why is it cutting out? Oh, my phone's not in my pocket; it's on the dining room table. And you test the limits of Bluetooth range in that respect. But anyways, nice once again to see some options and variety there, and with a little bit of style. So speaking of style, I know this is the story that Gray is most excited about. In this more coming out from some talks that Mark Zuckerberg has been doing recently, Facebook as CEO, talking about a partnership with Ray-Ban, and that Facebook Ray-Ban smart glasses are coming soon to a face near you. Gray, are you going to be first in line for the pre-order? Or what?
Yeah, these will go right beside my Snapchat spectacles. This is part of Mark's "Please don't break up my company" tour. You notice there's something new every week as they're desperately trying to avoid talking about the problems that Facebook actually has. Honestly, great choice working with Ray-Ban. Ray-Ban makes some great glasses. They came out last year and said that they were going to be a classic, which means they're probably going to be Ray-Ban's Wayfarers. If they can get Tom Cruise in there in his underwear to slide in with a pair of these things, you might have a winner. I think that's probably highly unlikely. If they get to do it as Les Grossman from Tropic Thunder, boom, there's a straight winner for you. But the one thing that we're looking at here, when we're looking at the actual announcement about the product, it's not an augmented reality pair of glasses. Doesn't have a display. This is really, really disappointing. When we're looking at this, what is this going to be? It's probably going to be like spectacles. You're probably going to have a camera on it. It'll look normal and won't look Google Glass-ish, but the features and specs there'll be some pretty neat things, but they'll look like a classic, but they're not augmented reality. Why are you doing this? Why are we here? It's got a set of headphones in it so you can maybe listen to your Facebook messages. I don't know where they're going with this. You guys know where they're going with this?
To me, it just looks like vaporware. They're basically just look at this great thing we're going to do that other people have already done, but we're going to do it and we're just going to brand it properly. I think, Gray, you make a good point. It almost seems like a distraction technique more than anything else, because Facebook does have some serious issues when it comes to their tracking features that they no longer have on a bunch of Apple and now a bunch of Google stuff as well. So I don't know. I don't see the value in it for what they're doing, other than trading on the Facebook name and the Ray-Ban's name. That just seems like it's a brand play than anything else.
And how wise is it really to partner with EssilorLuxottica, which itself has been accused of being a monopoly in the vision wear space, because they have gobbled up all sorts of brands over the years, and they're a giant in their own right. And so Facebook's like, oh yeah, we're partnering with this other quasi monopoly as well too. So I think one of the key things here, what they're doing is trying to even if these aren't AR yet, maybe they are in the future, but just to get a jump with something that will be like a gateway drug and that looks normal. It does, even like the Snap spectacles were kind of cool and funky, but they were pretty fashionista style. They were pretty large. They had the little one side with the flash, one side with the camera near the temples there. But it was just a little bit much. It's not something that I would wear. But if you're going with Ray-Ban, maybe Wayfarer's classic styling, is this a way just to ease people into the smart glasses territory and then add the augmented reality features later? What do you think, Ray? I mean, being the fashion icon that you are.
This really, I mean, if you're trading on Ray-Ban's style, great. A lot of people already have Ray-Bans already. The question is, what am I getting from this? And sort of this gives me, these quotes here give me some concerns. Excited to get the smart glasses into people's hands and to continue to make progress on the journey towards full augmented reality glasses in the future. He's already Osborned his own glasses here, right? Like, these are not going to be your smart glasses. These are smart glasses on the way to smart glasses. And you, my friend, we need you to help Facebook out today. You're going to be the one who's going to help us get to smart. Really? Am I going to pay for this? Mark, you're going to ask me to pay for this? Oh, you're going to give them to me. Probably not going to give them to me. This whole thing just smells bad. Like, there's nothing here that really says to a user, one, you're going to get something of value out of this. There's no display. If it's going to be taking pictures, you know what? Got one of those already. If I have it on my face all the time and it's always recording, great. Now you're the next generation Google Glass. I'm trying to find the win here. And on the fashion standpoint, I'll go buy a pair of Ray-Bans. I got 3 or 4 already. But I'm not buying a pair of Ray-Bans that have Mark stuck inside with maybe a GPS, maybe a camera. No, we're good. Hard pass.
Will, what do you think about the prospects of having your glasses hacked? I know you're a security conscious fellow. What's it going to take to get you into a pair of these Facebook Ray-Bans?
I mean, I'm not going to wear those. There's absolutely no way. But I mean, I actually own a pair of Wayfarer Ray-Bans. Like, I love them as glasses. I think the thing too is it's probably not a good idea to do this until you're ready to fully bake it. I mean, I think you do more harm because people really want, augmented reality or, a heads-up display, a HUD as they're walking around with, how their Bitcoin's doing or what other things are happening.
Live updates.
Live updates. It's like, no, you didn't, in the middle of nowhere. It's like, anyways, but
another crazy person yelling at themselves. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Watching a video while you're crossing the street, I guess that would be a great idea. But no, I mean, I think you do more harm to your brand than good if you don't deliver what people want. And I think people want augmented reality. They want a HUD almost like that. If you've seen the trailer for Free Guy, where he puts on the glasses and there's all these things around, that's where we want to be, not this. So don't sort of dangle something and then like, well, it's not really that, but we're working towards that. Yeah. It's like, give me the thing, not what the thing before.
What this is? This is actually a Black Mirror episode. That's what these glasses are going to be, where you basically have the camera running 24/7. And then when you go to customs, they take, you've got the glasses. Great. Let's just run through and see where you've been for the last 24 hours. And but it's closer to that than it is the Free Guy augmented reality glasses. So yeah, that's definitely a pass for me too.
And given like that, one of the biggest resistance points to Google Glass itself, and that's way back in 2011 when they had the Explorer edition of Google Glass, is that people were turned off by the notion that they could be surreptitiously recorded, whether it's still photos or videos. And you had the point, like especially down Silicon Valley area where Google Glass had, greatest adoption, because at the time it was $1,700 or something like that. It was not cheap, but people wanted to give it a try because it was, a glimpse into the future. But you had businesses putting signs on their doors saying like, no glass holes, please. So Facebook is doing the thing that we already learned the lesson about and not doing the cool augmented reality thing that the geeks are excited about.
More than being identified as someone who's recording people all the time, I'd be afraid that it would identify me as a Facebook user. And so that really is just, it's a bridge I can't cross.
You got to keep that on the DL. All right, let's have some fun. There was an article and a video recently about that made me think a little bit, because there is a new M. Night Shyamalan movie that's come out called Old, and it's in the theaters. I think it might be streaming as well. But there's a Mashable article that went through and ranked all the M. Night Shyamalan movies to date. And I know we've got a couple of Shyamalan fans here. And I just thought it'd be interesting to just go around and maybe cherry pick a couple of either your favorites or your least favorites, or anything that maybe is neither favorite or least favorite, but that you still found interesting and challenging and unexpected from Shyamalan. Because of course he's known for the big twists, thanks to Sixth Sense and a couple, and even Unbreakable. And then the twists people started expecting the twists, and then he just started going other directions, and people kind of got disappointed. And then there were some missteps and whatnot. But he's always been interesting. He's of our generation. So he's got a lot of the same cultural touchstones that we have. He made films as a kid, and I think I know some of us played around with that kind of thing as well. It reminds us of those kids that made a shot-by-shot remake of Raiders of the Lost Ark back in the 80s, and it was touring theaters about 10 or 15 years ago. So Jamie, seeing as you're our special guest, just some initial thoughts on M. Night Shyamalan's oeuvre today. Your favorites, your least favorites, any other thoughts?
Well, I haven't seen all of them. I haven't seen Old yet. I'm interested in it. I'm not a huge horror fan, although I've been trying to get into the intelligent horror movies like the Midsummer and some of those types of movies that try and tell a story and try and play with the current zeitgeist and reflect that on film. So
not just gore,
and not just gore. Yeah, gore just doesn't interest me all that much. Although the original Halloween, that's a good movie. That's a really good movie. But yeah, I really like the way. Again, I'm a big story guy. I really like somebody trying to put the effort in to tell a story. So I'm a big fan of, in this article, The Sixth Sense, fantastic. Although it's pretty hard for new, like my kids, one of them, it was spoiled for them before they got to see the movie, so they didn't get that, but one of them did get it, so that was good. Signs I love, because I still think there's something really cool about crop circles. I'm sure they're fake, but you just don't know for sure. You don't know for absolutely sure. But
they exist.
They exist. They do exist. It's true. But he's trying to work with culture as it exists, and then telling a story, interesting story about them. And so some of them are a bit iffy, like The Happening. I've only seen it once. It didn't just grab me, but he tried to tell an interesting story. I quite liked The Village and Split, which are sort of in the bottom half of this list. The Village is very much just a sort of expanded short story, but it was interesting. If you let the movie entertain you, if you try not to second guess it, which I think is what so many people were starting to do with his films, as you alluded to, he's Mr. Twist. He's Mr. He's our generation's Hitchcock in a sense. You try and outthink the director, and then if you outthink them, you've won, and that was kind of silly. But I think if you just kind of let the movies carry you along, they can be kind of fun. I even like Lady in the Water. It's weird, it's interesting casting, but again, you're like, that's a neat idea. I never thought about looking at, again, I don't want to spoil anything for anybody. Can I do spoilers for a movie that's from 2006? I'm not going to. And you know what? I liked Glass. It's 10th on their list, but again, if you take it at the three movies as a whole, Unbreakable and then Split and then Glass, the Bruce Willis was just phoning it in a little bit on his role there. But again, it was an interesting tying up of the whole story, the trilogy of movies there, in something I wasn't expecting, and like, that's kind of a neat idea. It kind of usurped my expectations, and that's a neat way of kind of putting it all together. So you know what, I give him kudos for trying something and not just trying to blow more things up. I respect him for all that.
Yeah, they find the final scene in Split really blew a lot of people's minds.
Yes, it blew my mind actually. Yeah, I didn't realize what it was. But again, no spoilers. No spoilers.
Of course.
Well, kind of, it's all spoiled now.
Now, Will, I know you had a particular attachment to Avatar: The Last Airbender, the animated series, and that a lot of people forget that M. Night Shyamalan directed the live action one. How does that rank in your Shyamalan movies? And it was that, and also, what else do you have to say about your favorites or least favorites of his work?
So, a little bit of sort of maybe blowing your mind is that I've never seen Avatar: The Last Airbender because I don't want to ruin the animated series for myself, which is one of the, like, I'm not exaggerating here, it's one of my favorite pieces of fiction as a whole ever. It and I even like the series after. I like that. It's not as great as the original, but I still really enjoy it. So I can't watch the movie. I own a copy of it. You may have even given it to me, Tristan. I can't watch it. I just can't. I just heard such horrible things about it that I can't watch it. And it's just like watching a shitty remake of Star Wars or something. Like I'm not gonna go and watch a remake of something that I love. So that's where I jump off the train with M. Night Shyamalan. I've seen a number of his movies. To Jamie's point, I find the thing is that he makes you think, and it's very interesting. I am not a horror movie fan. I don't often think, at least the ones that I've seen, like Signs and The Village and Sixth Sense, obviously, I'm probably missing a couple of the ones I've seen. They don't feel my favorite ones of his don't feel very horror movie. There sometimes is maybe something you should be afraid of, but then you realize there's actually nothing going on. There's something deeper that maybe you don't understand, or I guess Signs, maybe there might be something, but anyways. But, Jamie, you brought up The Village. That's actually one of my favorite ones from that list of the ones that I have seen. And I know it's not a very popular movie amongst some fans. It was the bottom of this list. I saw it with my sister whenever it came out, and she was super disappointed. She likes horror movies. She wanted there to be something more. And I think it was sort of interesting that it was mundane. And to your point, it was a surprise twist because there was really nothing going on. Or not much, spoilers, or not maybe what you had hoped that was going to be going on.
Mm-hmm.
So it played with the form. The other thing I'd say is I think this and movies like Fight Club were the ones that really started the whole idea of don't spoil things. Obviously you can go back to Star Wars, but there wasn't a ton of stuff. There was that transgender
like in the modern era, in the
like,
90s onward,
there's a couple things here and there where Siskel and Ebert got into some sort of bro fight over spoiling something in a movie 20 years or 30 years ago. But I feel like this popularized the spoiler. It popularized the sort of big twist, the thing that you shouldn't know before you go into the movie. So I love M. Night Shyamalan. I kind of fell off the train a little bit when he ruined Avatar, but I should probably jump into some of his latest movies.
And it just sort of it speaks to the fickleness of audiences, because people will fall in love with some truly original stuff, and then as soon as the director stumbles a little bit, then they become a whipping boy or whipping girl, as the case may be. And it's a little shame. It's like, let the artist do their art. You don't have to sort of lap up everything they crank out, but like people would there's the whole pile-on mentality, especially in the era of social media, which is a bit sad to see, because you would hate for directors as talented to get discouraged. And to be fair, he's done things like he's financed some of his own recent films just to get them out the door. And we need to encourage and foster creativity as much as possible. And so we have something other than simply the giant Marvel style and Star Wars blockbusters and whatnot, something a bit more thoughtful. And I think as opposed to pure horror, like some of his movies like The Village and even Lady in the Water, it was just more like a sense of creeping dread, even to the happening to a little extent. It's just the mystery. It's like, what in the actual F is going on here? And having that sense of mystery, I think, is something magical. And again, really amplified in a movie theater watching environment. Because Jamie, we saw The Village together in the theater, and I think we had a lot better impression of it than some people, maybe because we saw it in the theater. And again, that's not going to be the same for everyone, of course. Greg, take us home on this. What are your thoughts on M. Night?
So at the beginning of his career was probably the best for me, simply because one, it was sort of a pattern that we had not seen that much of. But two, when you go back and take a look at those films, like The Sixth Sense, like Signs, the pieces are all there. Unbreakable. The pieces are all there throughout the film, and he actually does a really great job of showing you how the pieces were all there throughout the film. So despite the fact that you've seen it and you know what the twist is, you can still get some enjoyment going back through them again. I think probably one of the biggest weaknesses that he has, it does come down to ego. You know, anyone who puts themselves into their own films all the time, at one point, literally almost being the messiah of that universe, was like,
bleeding in the water.
Really, friends? Like, was that something that you had to do? Because we were kind of doing well up until that point. And, you know, we saw some, I think probably the height of that hubris would be The Last Airbender, where you have an established universe, an established canon. You have people who love this all over the world. And you take that and you're like, I'm going to sign my name to this in big, bold letters, so much that you can't actually see the original material anymore. That was incredibly disappointing. You know, when we're looking at this, I'm familiar with the comic that Old is based on. I own it. And there's inherently a mystery here. And so when I'm hearing right now that there's a twist, I'm like, is it what was in the comic, or have you twisted the twist? And I'm actually interested to see,
twist.
like, it's, yeah. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes. Now, do I think that he's done some good work since? Like, The Village is good. After Earth, not so much good. Last Airbender, not so good. This, hopefully, quite good again. He's produced some stuff as well. And have you guys checked out Servant on Apple TV?
Yeah,
No.
it's on the list.
Okay, so this is actually why I have a little bit of faith right now, because that show, there's 2 seasons of it, and it does a really, really great job of presenting the same sort of like weird, bizarre, strange universe that seems much like ours. And, you know, there's just stuff going on where you're like, I have no idea where this is going right now. And that's the great feeling that I had at the beginning of his career. So I'm looking forward to the 3rd season, and I'm going to give Old a shot. I'm curious to see where he landed with the material, because it seems like perhaps he did burn his hand on the stove and perhaps isn't going to start reaching for that frying pan without that oven glove of other people's material, and maybe perhaps not him in the film that he needs.
Exactly. Hopefully he's learned his lesson there. Even a movie like The Happening, which just got
Haven't seen it, don't spoil
it in the reviews. Okay, well,
someone told me to watch it this weekend. I'm like, I promise you, I will watch it.
Okay, so in the Happening, I'm not going to spoil anything, but criticisms were like what is the hell is this story, and B, what is up with the acting? And then and I watched him like, okay, I get it, but then he's often trying to do something or say something or echo something that's been done before, and then I read it, it's like it's a Twilight Zone episode, and then you watch the Happening through that lens, it's like, oh, that makes sense. Even the acting style, it's like, oh, well, like I've watched a lot of Twilight Zone, like the original series and then the 80s series as well. And they even did isn't there like a new Twilight Zone series hosted by Jordan Peele as well?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's that totally nails it. And again, that makes sense for him as a filmmaker and a student and lover of film himself to emulate certain styles like that and do his own twist. And a lot of people just think, oh, it's Mark Wahlberg, he can't act. It's like, no, sure, he acts like Mark Wahlberg, but he was acting in a very particular way in that movie. So anyhow, I think lesson for future episodes of Momentous Live, if we're going to talk about something, especially if there's a new movie, we should all watch that movie first. So let's go see Old together. That'll be our homework.
Sounds good.
Okay, let's I don't want to skip Tasia, of course. I mean, she skipped us, but fine. We're still going to mention her latest video, 10 Google search tips to find exactly what you want. This is a great thing about Tasia's videos, 10 minutes or thereabouts, some quick hits, some very practical tips. There's a lot of people that don't realize that you can actually do all sorts of things in a particular Google search to help refine your search results a bit. And just starting with the basic advanced search, using quotation marks, for example, around phrases that you want to appear, as opposed to simply instances of the individual words in your search. You can limit searches to specific sites. So check out Tasia's video, youtube.com/Tasia Custodi, to learn how to supercharge your Google searches. Otherwise, if you want to find out more about Momentous, you can visit us at momentous.tv, facebook.com/momentous TV. Twitter.com/Momentous TV, Instagram.com/Momentous.tv. Search my name on YouTube to find a Momentous TV playlist until we get our own vanity URL. Hopefully by the time Time Crystals come out for real. Thank you to our special guest, Jamie Reynolds, and our stalwart Will Silver, and our ever stylish purple haloed Gray Williams. Looking forward to seeing you all next week on Momentous Live.